Welcome to the Breaking Average podcast, the podcast designed to challenge you to break the mold that average has on the world. Each episode offers insights directly from those who choose to break average every day. Now for the latest insights, here are your hosts, Paul Gustafson and Barry Smith.
Welcome to the Breaking Average podcast. I am Paul Gustafson and my co-host, Barry Smith. How you doing, man?
Well, being fully honest, it's been a challenging couple of weeks, but hey, I'm here with you now, and well, that's got to put a smile on my face.
I'm excited to be with you. You know, it was 2 weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, you and I sat down. We had a great conversation with Jason Turbo, and we just finished the two-part session with that. So hopefully everybody's enjoyed that conversation, that dialogue that you and I had with Jason. That was pretty awesome, right?
It was. I think that was actually the last productive thing I did. It was it was a lot of fun, and I got his book. I got the Oakland A's book, so I'm excited to get into that when I create some free time. So who knows when that will be. But yeah, just a great time with the podcast with Jason, and looking forward to maybe some future opportunities there.
I like what you just said about creating free time because, you know, let's be honest, you and I have talked about this many times, but maybe not so much on a podcast. We're both given 24 hours in the day. Both you and I mean, probably all our listeners and viewers, they've got challenges just like us, right? I mean, things are competing for their time, their attention, and finding free time. And maybe we can unpack some strategies and some tips and some thoughts in that area. But let's just be real with each other. It's tough, right? You said jokingly that perhaps the last productive thing you did was 2 weeks ago when we had that conversation. Share with everybody what happened.
Well, so I don't know. I don't remember what day we did. Actually, I think I do. I think we did that on a Monday.
Yes.
And I think the following day, my wife and I both tested positive for COVID. I've now gone 6 days negative. My wife's still positive and fighting with it. You know, it just slows you down. I had it a year and a half ago. This time was much worse. So I don't know if it's a new strain or what, but it just, just kind of takes you out of play. You can think you're going to do something, but it's just tough. And then you compound that by some family crisis stuff. Then Friday, my computer crashes. And for someone who pretty much, everything connects to that piece of my world, it just shuts you down. It's a reminder of how dependent we have become on technology. But this year, I've really been trying to reduce the distractions and create an environment where I can be, what I would call, for me anyway, ultra productive. And man, the productivity god's been against me this month. So I'm looking for a step in the right direction and get back on track because I got stuff to do, man.
All right. Well, let's have some fun. I mean, you and I have great dialogues and discussions. This one might have a little twist because you're going through a real challenge. So this is real. So guys, guys and gals, what's that?
Thank you for recognizing that.
No, and we've all been there. That's the first thing I want to be clear with, right? Who hasn't gone through some challenges?
Yeah.
And I think it's great just that you're willing to have a little bit of that conversation with us here, because I realize that those who are watching or listening to this, they may be going through some challenges too, right?
Oh yeah.
And so let's just kind of talk about some of this. So the idea that I think we can kick around is, how do we minimize those distractions? Especially, I mean, I'm going to tell you a little bit of stuff that's happening in my world too, because it's coming at me 100 miles an hour, and I don't have the ability to defend them all. I am not Neo from the Matrix, and I can't dodge all the bullets, right? So things are coming. And the other day, I found myself, I was helping out my father-in-law with his computer needs, which is like the common thing, right? Okay, can you reset my password? I forgot what it was or whatever. And so I was dealing with some struggles and some challenges there. And I realized, Barry, and I didn't mean to be mean. I mean, I was nice and all that, but I needed my space. I needed to kind of just step away for just a little bit so I could think.
Yeah.
So have you ever gotten to that state where you know there's just a lot coming at you and you just need, like, you just kind of want to hit that remote, put everybody on pause for just for a few minutes so that you can kind of refocus?
Yeah, not in about 5 minutes.
So how do you do that? Let's start with that. What are some practical things that folks can do to kind of catch their breath and say, okay, I'm going to get through this. I'm going to get focused. I'm going to find my way through it. And
I think for me, it's a great question. And I think if you asked me that question a year ago, I probably would have had a lot different answer. Probably made something up that never would work anyway. But it's something I've been real intentional about this year is just create an environment that's more productive, reduce some of the distractions. You and I are kind of going through a great book right now, talking about how our focus works, right? And no matter who we are, what we do, as much as 50% or more of the time, we're distracted by something, and there's no way around that. So I realized that the environment I used to have myself in probably decreased that number or increased that number even more. And so now I realize, look, dude, you got to do everything you can to try and set yourself up for success, because you are going to get distracted. Life is going to happen. So I'm coming to the belief that, knowing that that's going to happen, if we can just get rid of the stuff that we can control. We were talking earlier about Henry Cloud, you get what you create, you get what you allow. And so, what is it we are creating in our life that's either helping us or hurting us? And so I've really been intentional this year about trying to get, the stuff I can control out of the way. And I think it just better prepares us to deal for what we know is inevitable. Honestly, these last couple of weeks have been tough. Distractions, feeling poor, just Murphy's been hanging out with me for the last 2 weeks for sure. And yet, as I kind of look at it, and I've actually mentally walked through this to just, like you said, take a breath, but I've been able to, I haven't felt the world crashing down on me like I'm not getting done things I have to get done. There's things I'm not getting done that I want to get done.
Yeah.
But I honestly believe, because I've taken some steps over the last 8-10 months to get some of those unneeded things off my plate, off my desk, right? I've been better equipped and able to deal with life coming at me. And I can say a year ago, this would have been a different picture. I would have been dropping the ball, things where I was responsible to people or had deadlines. I don't know how that would have played out. So this time, even though it's a dip, even though it's the bottom of the roller coaster run, I've been able to manage my way through it. And I know there's light at the end of the tunnel, hopefully sooner than later. But I think we can do little things that may not necessarily show up on paper that they're going to make a big difference. But times like now, what I'm going through, they definitely help. It doesn't necessarily make it easier, but it definitely doesn't make it harder. And I think that's what, it's all we can hope for. We will get distracted. Life will happen. If we can be in a position to just kind of work our way through it, it's a lot better off than just feeling like, man, game over.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think and I appreciate what you're sharing. I think it's important for us to be real with folks, because the reality of it is sometimes our human nature is to get frustrated, maybe to get,
sometimes.
Right. I mean, things happen. I love Churchill's quote, right? You and I shared before we hit the record button. We both have a Churchill quote to share. Mine is this: you'll never reach your destination if you stop and throw stones at every dog that barks. And I think there's times, I'm just going to be real with you, Barry. There are times where I haven't followed that advice, right? I'm like, oh man, another distraction. And I don't even see it as a distraction. And I know it is. sometimes the distraction is an attraction, right? So I get pulled
Yeah.
off, like my phone just ding, perfect timing, right? Distraction, notification, pulling me away, right? And that's a lot of dogs are barking in my world, and there it goes again. It's see, dogs are barking,
It just
right?
doesn't
Perfect
matter.
timing.
I
Thank
know
you,
it.
Apple. I've turned off all your notifications, and you're still barking at me. So
It'll
yeah,
it'll
and
come from
Churchill's is
somewhere.
right. You'll never reach that destination if you
Yeah.
continue to stop and look at your iPhone.
Well, the Churchill quote I shared with you is when you're going through hell, you only got one choice. You got to keep going.
Yeah.
And I love that quote, and pardon the language for those that may offend. But I love that quote because I think there's times when any of us, myself included, when we're kind of going through that, HE double chopsticks,
Yeah.
and we just sit there and lament in it, and maybe feel a little bit of the victim, or want to give up. And I love that quote because something that resonates with you, that perseverance. It is, look, if you're going, you got to go, and we know it's not always going to be perfect. There's always going to be a challenge. I mean, look at you right now. What are you playing with your phone? You're not even listening to me.
I'm listening. I had to turn it off. I'm just like, I got to turn this thing off, man. So I just did.
But it's life. And I
Yeah.
think to become more aware of that, to recognize that that's reality, starting to learn that, we can't control everything, but we can better prepare ourselves to deal with what's coming at us. You can't avoid everything. You just
Yeah.
can't. We can't avoid aging. You just can't, but we can do things, better position us for when we get, pick your number, right?
Well, it comes down to choices.
Yeah.
And every day we've got a new set of choices to make. We make choices before we go to bed. We got choices when we rise. And, let's talk about that, right? So, in the midst of everything, whether you're fighting COVID or you're getting lots of phone notifications, you still choose, right? It's sort of an attitude element. And so if when we're trying to reach that destination, but we stop and throw stones at every dog that barks, that's not going to help us. What do? We make a choice. We have choices to make. So what are some of the ways that you, and let's kick this around, like what are some of the things that you do to be intentional with your choices so that those distractions are minimized?
Well, knowing my proclivity to failing tremendously in this area, honestly, I've tried to straighten up my environment. Take some of those things that I know would distract me and get them out of there. I mean, I'm looking at so many different things, apps on your desktop, or just icons, or on your phone. How many pages do you scroll through, right, to find the app you're looking for? I mean, it's crazy how much stuff we add into our world. So it doesn't even become just a cognitive choice. Now we're like hunting. We're hunting for time to do what we want to do because we're trying to navigate all these roadblocks we've put in front of ourselves, and then wonder why we're frustrated, why we're feeling overwhelmed. So I think the choice, I think the choice comes before the choice. What are you doing to better position yourself when those things are going to come? And I think that, well, I'll speak personally, I think that's where historically I failed, tremendously, because it's like you're living in chaos. And then when chaos hits that, man, it's just a double whammy. So if I can get some stability and kind of a process and a flow in my life when it's going good, then it's not so tough when you got a challenge in there. But man, if you're just living on the edge constantly, it doesn't take much to push you over.
That's true. I mean, let's be real about it. So I went back in college. I was distracted, right? So I had a lot of classwork, a lot of stuff that I needed to get done, and but there were other things competing for my attention if I wanted it. right? I was working in youth ministry, and I kind of liked that. I had some good friends. I liked hanging around with my friends, and I found myself in a position where I was avoiding the work that needed to be done.
Yeah.
And it just grew, and I felt this weight on my shoulder and my back. I mean, I was just, I wasn't sure. I was, they call it situational depression. I didn't know what it was then, but that's where I was, because I was feeling the weight of the world, and it seemed like everybody else was fine. Everybody else was just fine. And I remember Barb, we were dating at the time, and she knew something was going on. And I was in my last semester of college, man. I was close to the end, man, but I was ready. I was ready to quit. I was just like, okay, I'm done. I'm walking away. I'm leaving. And I'll pause here because there's something that's happening in society right now that really concerns me, Barry. And I'm seeing this. You've heard of the Great Resignation, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're seeing this in droves, and I can't help but think. And I'm not a doctor, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express at one time, and I think what they're experiencing is something very similar to what I experienced. Right? There's a lot happening. It's tough. It's tough to work at home. Let's be real, guys. I know some of the folks out there, especially the introverts, and I love introverts. But I know over time, it feels more pressure. Like you're always on 24/7, working all the time. There's a lot of pressure. There's emails or text, lots of things that are happening. And, I don't know your story if you're watching, listening, but I do know that there's some struggles and challenges that are happening, especially in light of COVID and working from home and all that. And there is something here that's happening in terms of a number of folks leaving their environments that they loved, thinking that they never would leave it, but now all of a sudden they are. And I'm not faulting for it. Maybe there's a great opportunity for you, and that's great, fantastic. But I'm wondering if we're trying to avoid something here, just like I did back in college. Like, oh, wait a minute, there's something else. I wasn't looking for it, but somebody told me about this opportunity and shared it with, right? So there's these prompts that are happening left and right. And the truth of it is that we're struggling inwardly. And maybe we need some of that. You and I are on a Zoom call connected, 1,000 miles apart. But I know, like, when we're together, there's something satisfying about that face-to-face connection, right?
Definitely.
We need that. And so we've got to find a space and a place where we can connect with others, and maybe having that other person on the other end speak to us and give us something that is the most powerful force in the universe, at least in my opinion. And that's
I couldn't agree more. And certainly the Great Resignation is a real thing, but there's a number missing, right? There's a number missing from the equation that I haven't really heard anybody talking about. And that number is really how many of those people are running from something versus running to something.
Right.
And I think it's clearly both.
Yeah.
But what does that do for the long-term play in this, right? You've got those who are going, hey, there's a better option out there, something that works better for me. They're going out and being successful at it, and they probably won't come back. They're creating, right? They're creating a better environment for themselves, a better way they want to model and mold their job, and they'll probably be successful at that and stay there. Then you've got the other side who's just, looking for change. Look, this country goes through it every 4 years. Change. Yes. People just want change, and people vote change. I think as many people vote change as they vote for a candidate.
Yeah. Okay.
They just vote for something different.
Yep.
And, to me, that's unfortunate because, the people do stand for something or stand for nothing. But it saddens me that people, it's almost like, what was it? A movie way back, was a Richard Pryor, something, vote for none of the above. And the guy won. I mean, that's what it feels like today. And so when you talk about the Great Resignation, I think a lot of people, not just that, I think our society as a whole, I think a lot of people are just running from, where they're at. And, it's not a very good success formula to run from something, just to get away from it. But I think that's the mindset. And that's why when you start talking about distractions and things like that, that's where it's coming from, because there's no direction, there's no purpose. And that to me is sad. That's a loss in human potential.
And that word you just mentioned, the purpose, I think it comes down to that, right? So if we get clear on our purpose, then we're able to not worry about the barking dogs that are happening as much. We can stay a little bit more focused. And so for me, how I got out of it way back when was to be reminded of my hope. Yeah. Like, this hope that we have, what is it that you hope for? Do you still have hope? That was the question that was asked to me. Do you still have hope? And it made me ponder, made me think. I'm like, yeah, I do. And then through that set of questioning, and I love coaching. This is really the power of coaching. A coach does this. They'll ask those questions. What is it that you hope for? What do you see as something purposeful that you want to go after and get? Well, what do you need to do to go do it? What's one thing that you can do? And through that progression, because sometimes we think, wow, it's overwhelming. The power of my greatest fear, I identified a bunch of fears in that book, Leaders Press On. And one of the fears that I identified in there is the fear of the process. And that's when we think of all the work that has to be done to accomplish and achieve something, and it can almost feel overwhelming.
Sure.
And the way to get through the fear of the process, and I think it's something that a lot of us deal with, the way to deal with the fear of the process is to find out, well, what's the one thing that you need to do, that you can do and that you should do? Can you go do it? Yep. And when we find success in doing that one thing, then we can take that next step, because maybe we don't need to see all the steps. Maybe we just need to see the next step, and we go after that, and we get the focus that we need. So this kind of dives into Henry Cloud stuff, right? With boundaries. So he's talking about boundaries, right? And he talks about three things: attend to what matters, inhibit what does not, and maintain that working memory. Right? So what is it that you want? That's working memory. Yep. All right, wait a minute. So attend to what matters, inhibit what does not. Does that really help you? Answering those phone calls, answering, hey, that's why they made voicemail. That's why they made voicemail. That's why you can go back later and look at that text if you need to. You can go back and look at your Instagram posts and Facebook messages later, not every time the device dings. And I'm going to turn off this thing. I'll figure it out a way. I got to figure it out, man. It's tied to my computer now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know. Don't have your MacBook and an iPod and your phone on the same time. You turn one off and the other ones will ring.
Yeah.
No, it's the way of the world. No, I love, you and I both went through Henry Cloud's book, Boundaries for Leaders, a number of years ago. But it just still resonates with me how important those boundaries are. I've kind of tweaked it a little bit into filters. And now, go back to your choices and making decisions we were talking about earlier. Cheryl and I have really started looking, as far as our road to sovereignty, where we want to be in the next couple of years. It's like, okay, is this choice going to move us closer to that? And so we've got a set of filters where we can say, okay, is it going to, or is it not? And I'll tell you, Paul, it's honestly made a lot of decisions that, could be tough, well, yeah, I can see it that way. Yeah, I can see it this way. But it's made a lot of those decisions or choices a lot easier, because it's been, no, that doesn't move us closer to the goal. And so, go back to what we're talking about. How do you get rid of the distractions? How do you stay focused? Get rid of the noise and clutter, the stuff that is not going to get you to where you want to go. Now, you got to identify that, right? It's easy to make that statement. Oh, if it's not going to add value to you, don't do it. Well, you've got to be able to identify that and make that cognitive decision to go, yeah, that's not going to serve me. That's not going to help me serve others. It's not going to move me forward. Boom, easy. That's a no.
Yeah. Does this is this in my best interest to buy, to answer, to respond to, or not, right?
Yeah.
How does it serve me? To your point, so important, so critical. And I loved how you talked about early on the environment, setting that environment up. I mean, physically, I mean,
Yeah.
there's different aspects to environments, right? So there's the physical environment that you have. There's the environment of those that you choose to hang with and just and be with. There's that environment. There's the environment in terms of where you choose to work, not just the physical
Yeah.
environment, but okay, you're going to go into work. What time? All right. How do you kind of map out your day? I like how you and I went through a book with he was an L2L speaker last year. What was the book we just did? It's The Power of One More. Ed Milet,
Ed
right?
Milet. Yeah.
Fantastic book. And he talks about break up your day into 3 components.
Yeah. That I love it, man. But that, oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. But in a sense, that really resonated with me.
Yeah.
Again, setting yourself. So I would almost consider that your mental environment. And he talked about, I got my family time, I got my work time, my workout time, and really broke that all down and said, no, I got the morning, I got the afternoon, and I got the evening. And so where most people kind of look at it and go, yeah, I got 2, saying, no, I got a day and a half, I got 3 days. I can be intentional and just accomplish a lot more. Now I don't know that I'm going to reach the goal that maybe he's been proficient at it, but it did really make me think, again, what are we doing with our time? I've been tracking my time for really since the beginning of the year and really analyzing where I'm investing my time. And it is an investment. People say time and money are the 2 things that, prevent us from doing things we want to do and so forth. To me, they're miles apart.
Yeah.
There's always options for money. You can work harder. You can get a part-time job. You can sell something. You can, there's unlimited ways you can generate financial return. Time, one and done, bro.
One and done.
It is the non-renewable resource in our life. So in what I've learned in tracking my minutes every day is, first of all, I had a lot of opportunity in front of me. And I point back to what I've been going through the last couple of weeks. If I wasn't as efficient in doing what I've been doing over the last few months, this could have train wrecked me. No, you got a little bit of float built in. You get the things done that have to get done. It's not as overwhelming. It doesn't make it feel any better, but you manage your way through it. It reduces your stress level. I took my blood pressure the other day and I thought, man, it's going to be through the roof, just based on what the last, previous 6 hours had been like. And no, it was, right in line with where it should have been. I was just like, okay, maybe I am starting to figure something out here. Yeah.
That's so good. I'm thinking about this, right? Because that one of the craziest things that's happened over the last 40 years are storage units.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely. Crazy.
I mean, if you were smart enough to buy into that early on, like, okay, I'm going to be an entrepreneur in storage units, you're probably a multimillionaire.
Oh yeah.
Maybe you could be. Because people have a lot of stuff. They fill their houses. We continually to add to it. We subscribe to all the different Disney Pluses and ESPN Pluses. We're just consumer oriented, right? And so what happens over time with all that consumerism? It's going to create more distractions for us.
Yep.
And we're going to lose sight of what it is that we really, truly hope for. What do you want to accomplish? What do you hope to accomplish? Covey says, start with the end in mind. Well, what is that? Is it really to have the most stuff? I don't think so.
For some people, he who dies with the most toys wins.
What do they win?
It's the immediate gratification, right? It's something you and I have watched. I would say, our generation, probably has seen this better than anybody. because, you know, when we were kids, mail was kind of like mail was for our parents. Communication was kind of like it was, you know, it was different, but still it was a phone call. It was you was turn a dial, you know, and then it kind of, what it is today, everything, our whole lives been conditioned for immediate gratification. And so I don't even think our minds look, you know, when you say the end in mind, well, the end in mind, well, what does that mean? Where I'm at tonight? I mean, we don't even go beyond a day or a week anymore. It's like, what am I going to get done right now? And then everything changes in the morning because your computer crashes, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, we've just forgot, you know, we forgot how to create a long-term goal and stick with it. Because look, one thing hasn't changed. Good things take time to get, to create, to make, to reach. Nothing comes easy. Nothing comes overnight. You know, what's the saying? It only took me 20 years to become an overnight success. Yeah. Love that one, right?
Yeah.
But it's just, we've been conditioned. So it really takes, you know, you got to unlearn, you know, a word both you and I both appreciate. We've got to unlearn the habits and tasks, you know, that we've created for our lives, and start thinking about, you know, what is it that we really want. So I love you bringing boundaries into the conversation. Most people don't have any.
Yeah. You know, what's really interesting is how the brain gets wired up in this area, right? So we have a lot, like we talked about, the distractions that happen. They compete for that headspace up here, right? If we can control this a little bit better, just a little bit, just fine tune it, maybe some of those distractions aren't going to be so much a distraction. Maybe we'll find a way to like, okay, we can see through all the clutter. We can listen through all the noise. And that executive function that sits right here, this is what Henry Cloud talks about, the importance of getting that right. Attend to what matters, inhibit what does not, maintain that working memory. He's talking about improving that executive function of your brain. What's interesting, Barry, is that I did some research on this, and I found out there's something called astrocytes. You ever heard of that? It's like the craziest term ever. Astrocytes.
Yeah, but I don't remember what I read on it.
Astrocytes. So, you know, we have neurons that kind of that fly around, and there's a companion type of element that also, you know, this. So we may have, think about it, right? You've got different neurons that are firing. You've got serotonin, you've got cortisol, you've got endorphins, you got all those things, right? And we could have a whole conversation on that. Well, there's this other
dopamine.
One what's that?
Don't forget dopamine.
Dopamine, right? Yeah, all of these things. And some of those dings that you hear on the phone and everything else, those, and our need to get to satisfy and look at those, we're trying to satisfy our dopamine needs, right? It's a dopamine hit is really what those are. If we can minimize that, that's good. But there's something else that's at play. Have you ever had that urge to just quit something? Like, I just want to be done with something, right?
Yeah, not since 5 minutes ago again, right?
Yeah. So that's another, it kind of like those other ones that we just talked about, kind of like the cortisol and everything else, but it's something called astrocytes. And it really creates this urge to quit. And understanding that, like, okay, wait a minute, that this is a real brain chemical reaction that's happening. And I need to find ways to kind of control that, whether it's diet, whether it's sleep, whether it's, you know, physical fitness, all these things that are happening as far as the distractions. If I can control that, if I can make the right choices, I can minimize the impact and influence of those astrocytes that are happening inside my mind.
Yeah.
And that's important, because those who finish first, or those who finish, let's just call it that, those who finish found a way to minimize those astrocytes, found a way to stay focused. And I think that's really our desire, right? I mean, that's if we want to break average, we're going to have to do that.
Yeah, well stated. I think that's part of the challenge I think we have in that again, going back to our habits and our choices and our decisions, we're making a lot of poor decisions, and we make it harder than it has to be. So no wonder we want to give up and quit. You just feel like you're up against a wall. And what are the sayings? If you do the hard things now, life will get easy. If you do the easy things now, life's going to be hard. There's some truth to that.
Yeah.
Choices, boundaries, limits, some good words today, my friend. But I think at the end of the day, you got to be intentional about what type of I know I'm redundant on this, but you got to be intentional about the type of environment you get into. It's just going to impact you in so many different ways. I mean, the things you don't even know about.
Yeah. I mean, this is great. So let's we could spend more time on this. You're right. We need to kind of land the plane. So what's a tip or challenge? Let me just share a thought, and then I'll let you kind of feed off that. Can we do that?
Oh yeah.
So I love TED Talks, right? You like watching a good TED Talk or listening to one? Simon Sinek's one of my favorite ones, and that's good. And he does a lot of stuff on brain. But there's another one, but a lady named Sabine Dobell. She's a cognitive scientist, and so she did a TED Talk in 2018. That's pretty good to watch. And she had a quote there that really grabbed my attention. And here it is. She says, if you want to improve your executive function, right? So we're trying to get this thing working right. If you want to improve your executive function in some aspect of your life, don't look for quick fixes. Yeah. Don't look for quick fixes. Think about the context and how you can make your goals matter more to you. And she really has kind of hit something very important. What are your goals? What are your values? Do they really matter to you? Because your behavior exhibits what you actually value. Other people, if somebody was going to evaluate and see you and watch you for what you do, how you spend your time, how you've set up your environment, it's going to say a lot about who you are, what you really care about, what you value. What are those goals that matter to you? Could others figure it out? Could they see that in you? And that might help you, because it will help you. It'll help you sharpen up that executive function and be able to step forward with more clarity. Clear boundaries is important. We talked about Ed Milet. He has boundaries. You look at all those who have done something great. Maybe they've struggled at some point in time. Maybe they went through situational depression, but there's a way to overcome that. Get clear on your focus on what it is that you want, and then you start to see some really positive results. So I'll share that. Your turn. I want to hear your thoughts on it, because I know there's a lot of ideas that you've had in this space as well.
Well, you hit the nail on the head when you brought clarity into it. I mean, I was literally thinking that word, a couple seconds before you brought it in here. That's what we need, and I go back to what I kind of shared earlier about Cheryl and I on our road to sovereignty and what our filters are. My encouragement, would really be challenge yourself. What are your filters? What are your filters? And then once you determine that, okay, and what I mean by that is what filters your decisions, your choices based on what you want to do with your life. We've talked about purpose, we've talked about passion. I mean, we've covered a lot today. Right. But where do you want to go? And some people, they're not clear on it. They're worried about where they're going to be, next week, or how they're going to pay their phone bill, which makes it tough, because then you're focused on things that aren't necessarily going to get you thriving. They're more focused on surviving. And that's tough. So I'd encourage anybody, think about what's serving you and your purpose, where you want to go. And then take some simple actions to filter out some choices to move you in a positive direction. Start small. Look, path of least resistance. Do something simple.
I love the filter.
Don't go out to eat tomorrow night.
I love the filter concept. It's powerful. Yeah. So we want to invite you to go visit our webpage, breakingaverage.com. And Barry, I want gonna drop in on that page a filter. Can I just share it with you kind of verbally here? But I'll stick this tool
Let's have
out
it.
there on the website. So here it is, right? So we get interrupts and notifications all the time, right? So we ask the question, one question, can it wait? Can it wait? Because most of the time when we see that notification, and you've seen this before, right, Barry, where somebody gets their phone is ringing in the middle of a conversation and they go and grab it and pick it up and answer it, right? Guilty as charged, right? We've all done it. Ask yourself, can it wait? Right? If it can't wait, no, I can't wait. I need to respond to it right now. Well, wait a second. Okay. Bookmark what you're currently doing so that you can pick it up later. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's context switching that's happening. You're going to lose track and lose momentum of what you're working on now. But yes, a notification happened, an interrupt happened, and maybe you need to respond to that. But don't lose track of what you're doing, right? So bookmark what you're currently doing so you can pick it up later, all right? And then block out limited window of time to fully respond to interrupt. Give it a short period of time, all right? Okay, yes, I can help you for 5 minutes, but then I need to get back to what I'm working on. And give them that 5 minutes, limit that time. And then once you are done with that, then resume your original work.
Yeah, key concept on limiting the time. Look, I do this with people. Hey, I got 15, when's a good time to chat? Hey, I got 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And then if you don't, everybody, and this, you're either doing it to people or they're doing it to you. Yeah, I got a minute, and an hour later, you're, hanging up the phone. Yeah. What's an hour gone? Now, you may have added value, you may have learned something, but most likely it was just a little bit of chit chat. So
that's true.
It goes back to, where you invest in your time. Is this phone call, or this interruption going to serve me? Is it going to move me forward? Look, I respect that. Somebody tells me that they got 15 minutes. Thank you. I appreciate you making any time for me, and I'll honor that 15 minutes. I appreciate that. Don't be afraid to use that with people.
Exactly. And you and I talked about time blocks, right? Be clear with somebody that you're connecting to, like, hey, do you have a hard stop? Do you have 10 minutes, 15 minutes? Be clear on that. Honor the other person by being clear on that time that they can give to you to support you. And likewise, do the same. Don't give somebody, if somebody asks you for 10 minutes, don't give them an hour unless it's going to take an hour and it's in both your best interest to give them that hour. But most of the time, Barry, I think the can it wait is yes, it can wait.
Yeah.
Definitely. Right. So pocket the request, putting it on your to-do list so that you can attend to it later.
And then same thing. Be intentional the way you do it later. Put the time constraints on it. Look, folks, this little stuff adds up. I've learned this over the last 10 months, tracking my time. These minutes count, they add up. What would you do if you could come up with an extra hour a day, 5 hours a week? Yeah. Think about that. Any of you, what would you do if you had that much more time? I know most of you, it's there to be found.
Yeah. So this is a simple little tool, Barry. Yeah. I know there's a bunch of other ones, but when you said filter, I'm like, okay, let me just share this one with everybody. It's a little extra nugget, but I love your comments on this.
I'm going to trademark that filter.
Blocking and tackling interrupts. That's that filter. All right. So thank you guys for tuning in on that one. So again, visit us at breakingaverage.com. And Barry, this has been fun, man. I've enjoyed this time with you.
No, always, man. So you put a smile on my face, help me out with my attitude, check up from the neck up. It's all good, man. Always adding value to me.
Hey, likewise. Well, guys, join us again next week as we hit another great topic. It's going to be a lot of fun. So Barry, thanks for your time today. And guys, thanks for watching.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Breaking Average podcast. If you loved what you heard, please take a moment to subscribe. This show was produced by R Squared Multimedia. All opinions and comments expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and do not reflect the opinions or views of any of the advertisers, producers, or platforms. As you continue your day, what is one action that you can apply from this podcast to your life? Tune in for our next episode as we continue to challenge everyone to break average.